Okay, in this short podcast we're going to talk about the Reformation. And the Reformation is a term used to describe the religious change that took place in Europe around 600 years ago, in 1500. Importantly, it talks about how the church split from being a single Roman Catholic church headed up in Rome and the Pope to a two-way Christian faith. We have a Protestant movement or a protest movement challenging the church, and the continuation of the Catholic Church as well. So why did this come around? Well, one thing you need to understand is that in 1500 everybody was religious. Everybody went to church. Most people, I would say almost 99% of the population, believed in God. But the church services and the way the church conducted services had not changed for several hundred years. And things were starting to crack at the seams, as it were. For example, many priests and bishops, who were the foot soldiers of the church, held several important posts. What that meant is that they couldn't do one job properly. And we call this pluralism. And so the church services often were held by a non-specialist, a non-priest, because the priest was away tending to another job that they were given, but of course being paid for this. Another thing that people were becoming quite upset about is the notion of indulgences. Indulgences are where perhaps wealthier people could pay the church for their sins, and the idea was that when they die and go to purgatory to have their sins assessed by God, the fact that they had paid all these indulgences to have a church roof repaired or such like, this would allow them to be accepted into heaven without waiting too long in purgatory. And of course many people felt this was unfair. And church services were held in Latin, and many people were thinking about, well, why can't the services themselves be held in the language that the local language, so that the congregation at churches can listen to what the message of the Bible is actually preaching. And all Bibles to this point were still written or printed in Latin, and it's up to the priest to translate them. And finally, there was the church service itself, and one important aspect of the church service was to do with transubstantiation, which is the part of Mass where the priest turns the wine and the bread at communion into the body and blood of Jesus Christ. Now, this process and part of the church service was also being questioned by many people around Europe. And we have a group in England known as the Lollards. They question this. And we've seen around the 1520 the workings of a German priest called Martin Luther. He was the first man within the church to openly criticize the Catholic, Roman Catholic Church about their practices. And this began the Reformation in earnest. And from here on in, we see a battleground between the existing church and those people who are wanting to reform the church, hence the Reformation. Henry VIII is King of England while this is going on, and he's very soon having to decide what direction his country as King of England what direction they should be heading in. Are they saying Catholic, Christian, true to Rome and the Pope, or are they to adopt some of the practices of this new Protestant movement? So there we have it, the Reformation.